Okay, so everybody, thank you for joining us today. If you're just joining or getting in, thank you very much. Today's session, Now versus the Future versus the SRA, LinkedIn and social media. It's all about being social, engaging, and occasionally stalking people on social media. My name's Rich Dibbins, Head of Sales and Digital Strategy for Conscious. We're a digital agency based in Bristol, but work all over the UK, helping law firms with their digital marketing. Three things, Andy's already picked up on one of them. We love the colour orange, and one thing you can't see are my bright orange dogs that tend to get kidnapped at various legal events. Now, I'd love to introduce you to our panel. We have two of them at the moment. Annie's having a few technical issues. Helen Reed, who is the Head of Operations from Bristol Law Society. We work with Helen and her team to assist various law firm members in and around Bristol, either on their digital or social media, or met them at the wonderful events that Helen holds. We then have Andrew Donovan, who's the ex-SRA enforcer. I had to ask permission to use that with Andrew,
Yes.
who runs the compliance office. Andrew and I connected through LinkedIn after a fantastic discussion over the last couple of weeks, which has prompted this webinar. To talk about what law firms can and can't do on LinkedIn. And perfect timing, and here she is. This is Annie Joseph. Annie is a trainee family solicitor from Anstey. I've been following Annie's LinkedIn stories and her content. Annie is a great advocate for the future of law and how up-and-coming lawyers should engage on LinkedIn. So brilliant, that's brilliant timing, Annie. It's almost like we timed it to that, wasn't it? Oh, your microphone's muted just there. It's all right, don't worry. I'm still doing the intro, so it's absolutely fine.
I was going to say the cheek of me to talk about tech and then my PC factor.
Absolutely fine. So a recorded version of this webinar will be available, but that's not an excuse to leave now. Anybody who says, oh, it's a recording, I'll bugger off and I'll get the recording. Please don't leave. We'd love to hear from you in the Q&A box. We've got a couple of polls we're going to be running as well to understand what problems or what issues you guys might be facing in the firm. And our first poll I'm going to do right now is, who are you? Who are you on in the webinar at the moment? So what is your job role? We'd love to know. All the polls are anonymous, okay? So I'm not going to be mining the data or doing anything weird or wonderful. So I'm going to launch the poll now. The panel can also engage with this. It's going to be up for about 20 seconds, but you can just tick which one is relevant to you.
Done.
And while that poll, excellent, we've got 32 on here. I really appreciate 32. That's a great number to have on. And we're almost finished. Two more people. Wow, you guys are speedy clickers today. We really want to see those fingers. 32 more. Okay, so we've got a mixture of paralegals, associates. The majority of them are consultants in the legal sector. Number of in-house people. Thank you for nobody putting "it's none of your business." That's brilliant. Although I would have found that funny if somebody put that. Okay, right, let's start with my first question. Okay, let's kick things off. With social media, LinkedIn specifically, I recently did a poll on LinkedIn for law firms. The question was, how many of you have been told by your marketing managers or your partners, you must be on LinkedIn? Now, out of about 127 votes, we had the following. 90% said, yes, I must be on LinkedIn by my partners or directors. 0 said, no, I haven't been told. I've never been told by my partners or directors that I must be on it. And 10% said, I just get on with it. So Annie, my first question for yourself. What are your thoughts as a future solicitor moving into this legal world, being told you must be on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I don't really like being told that I have to be on it because I hate authority and I don't like being told what to do. But I think casting my mind back to when I started, I think there was a talk of you should all be on LinkedIn and you should be, you know, being really professional and showing yourself. And I've started to use it more in lockdown and actually show a bit more personality, and I'm enjoying it a lot more. And I think if you send out the message that you have to be, people might be more reluctant to do so. But if you sort of extol the benefits, because of LinkedIn. Like it's helped me get my NQ job, it's helped me build up networks, it's helped me speak to other aspiring trainees and trying to help them. I think that goes a lot further than saying you have to be on it, because I don't know, if they're anything like me, they'll rebel, and they won't.
Excellent. Andrew, what's your stance on law firms telling their solicitors they must be on LinkedIn?
Well, I think it's a good thing to want people on LinkedIn. I think that's a good thing. I think I'd share Annie's sort of query about whether telling them they have to is necessarily the right stance. I think the other thing to bear in mind, everything I think about is in risk and compliance terms, is making sure that people understand how to use the platform and understand, to keep it professional. And maybe some sort of, induction training, something like that. I think on the one hand, it's good to be on there, but if you don't actually know how to use it, it might be a waste of your time, really. And also, if you've got a bit of a loose cannon, you want to make sure that they know the standards that the firm expects. There's a few. I mean, generally the risks from the SRA side on LinkedIn are probably overstated, but there are one or two horror stories to watch out for, which we'll perhaps get into later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We won't name and shame, but between myself and Andrew, we have a plethora of people who've done weird and wonderful things. And Helen, how many law firm members struggle with the concept of LinkedIn?
I've been talking to people recently, knowing that we're having this event, and I think it's possibly not struggle, but I think there is always the concern that Andrew obviously is talking about for lawyers, that I think there's two things that they worry about: straying into legal advice, and then commenting or saying something on a post that's potentially controversial or political, and sort of gets them into that arena. But I think there's for our members, there's a real spectrum of users. There are those people who use it on an individual basis, and they're just kind of doing their own thing. They might be there, almost they've created a profile and almost to stalk others, and build those connections. And then you've got people who will repost a little bit, and then you've got those firms who are saying to people, do share the sort of the corporate PR material. And so there's a lot of sharing and liking going on. And that seems to be where a lot of lawyers find themselves. So I think that feels quite comfortable because it's been signed off by marketing. And if you're not commenting on something, you can't get into too much trouble. And then you get probably the sort of the hyper users who are kind of using LinkedIn, and it's aligned with their with their company branding and strategy, and they're being a bit more engaging. They're sharing a little bit of that personality. And there are firms that encourage people to do so and are trying to sort of differentiate themselves in the market. But with that, there's always an inherent risk, I guess. And I think so. I think that's where people's worries are, and I think that's probably where we'll turn to later on in the conversation.
Absolutely. There's one rule that I used to live by, and it was everybody had to be on LinkedIn. Until 3 years into the legal industry, I decided to change tact, and I basically said to partners and associates, if you don't want to be on LinkedIn, don't do it. And they looked at me as if to say, oh, fantastic. It's almost like I don't have to go for a run to lose weight. I could just sit at home, which isn't the case. You do have to run to lose weight. But what my worry was, I was telling people to be on LinkedIn, and they were doing that as kind of the shutters were going up. I'm not doing it. Annie, you kind of touched on it. If somebody tells me I have to do something, I rebel. And that's what lawyers do. So I was saying, let's champion the ones who want to use LinkedIn. As you mentioned, Helen, the ones who are on brand, on message, and you get more out of it and they enjoy it, because organically, the people who are not on LinkedIn, who said, no, I don't want to do it, they suddenly see the likes of Annie and her team doing it, going, well, how come Annie's getting so many clients? She's marketing herself on LinkedIn, her personal brand, her firm's brand, and it builds engagement, and then gradually they grow into it and actually start engaging further. So,
Rich, just to chip in on that, I think that I have to say, we helped set up quite a few new startups and law firms and things, and I think one consideration for firms strategically is that if you're relying on the people to generate the work, do they still need to work in your firm? So I think you know, if some people quickly realize if they're going out doing all the work, generating all the work, I'm not encouraging this. I think there's lots to be said for a big law firm, but I think there does come a point where people are left to you know, develop their own work after they've got their 3 years. They think, well, what, you know, why am I doing this for other people? Why don't I set up on my own? I can generate my own work. SaaS is making everything much easier. I've got my 3 years experience. I'll go and set up on my own now. So firms, you know, there is an opportunity for firms to generate that work and engage in that without necessarily, you know, if you do rely on people, they become very self-sufficient very quickly.
Absolutely. And there is this whole kind of certain mentality in some law firms where the blinkers are on. This is my client, this is who I work with, I'm not doing anything else, and everybody else can do their own thing, but I'm doing this. But we are seeing modern law firms, you know, things like Keystone, Setfords, all of those types of law firms, which are open, and they're engaging more. Not saying for Anstey aren't doing that as well, obviously they are, because you're doing it, Annie. But no, valid points, absolutely. Okay, on to our next poll. Partners or directors' perception of you being vocal on LinkedIn. So here's the poll. What is your perception? What do you think your partners or directors' perception of you being vocal on LinkedIn is? So this is where you might be concerned if they're looking at your posts. Are you worried about what you post in case they look? And while that poll is running, okay, our next question we're going to move on to, I'm going to start with Andrew on this one. Andrew, when it comes to what solicitors can and can't do on LinkedIn, and I think this is one of the golden questions is on everybody's lips, what is your biggest concern?
Yeah, I think I'm quite concerned by the suggestion of some sort of chilling effect on people's posts and content and things like that. I mean, it's to get it wrong, you have to get it very wrong. So my main concerns would be fairly obvious stuff. So disclosing confidential information, that everyone should know that that's a no-no. You just don't disclose confidential information. Sometimes people make a mistake and name a client. Well, unless that's already in the public domain, you should really get your client's consent before you name your client, but just basic stuff. Don't, you know, maintain confidentiality. And the other one is don't say really stupid, shocking things. You know, making a joke is fine. You know, perhaps being a bit cheeky is fine. Criticizing is fine. Having a rant is fine. But so it has to, in order to get on the SRA's radar, your post and content has to be such that it would undermine the confidence in the profession. So that's fairly high bar. So things like shocking behaviour. So one recent case was a paralegal who basically said the Prime Minister deserved to contract the coronavirus. You know, not only is that, you know, likely to cause problems with the SRA, potentially for the firm, it also caused a massive crisis national news coverage for the firm for all the wrong reasons. There was also a solicitor who posted about, you know, there's very unprofessional conduct. So a solicitor who posted about a murder trial using emojis. So he used daggers and screaming faces and things like that, just grossly unprofessional way to do it. So that resulted in action as well. And, you know, it goes without saying that really sort of awful racist comments and misogyny and threatening behavior, all that stuff, obviously will result in action, and quite rightly so. But generally speaking, you know, people shouldn't be too afraid. Just remember, you're not in the pub. You shouldn't be in the pub. I would probably suggest. The one final thing just to mention is that some people have been concerned about the SRA's changed its rules on cold calling and extending it to electronic communications, that ban. But for LinkedIn, because it's business to business and it's a network that everyone signs up to, specifically to be a networking platform, the ban doesn't apply. You know, this cold calling ban just doesn't apply to LinkedIn. So people don't need to worry about sending messages on LinkedIn or doing a cold connection request. There might be other reasons not to do cold approaches on LinkedIn. but you don't need to worry about the SRA.
We've had our first question. By the way, you guys can ask questions, as many as you like. No such thing as a stupid question, just a stupid answer in return. Our question is, I would be interested in a view, if you are at a firm and they develop contacts and clients via LinkedIn, who do they belong to, the firm or the individual? It's a very good question. Who would like to answer that one?
I mean, is it fair to say that, I mean, this is probably, an employment law, possibly data protection point, and I'm not sure if we've got the expertise. My understanding from working with sort of employment lawyers on various contracts for employee relationships is that certainly the advice that I've seen is to tie that down very closely in the employment contract if that's something that's going to be of value. And let's face it, it could be of enormous value. There are cases on it. I'm afraid I don't have the expertise to go into much depth, but I on the basis that I know employment lawyers are very keen to deal with it, it's something that is probably not clear cut, and get some employment law advice, get your contracts in order and make sure it's covered off. Don't forget it, because it could be exceptionally valuable.
I did do a LinkedIn talk a couple of years back, so I know the HR and employment laws have changed since then. And there was this kind of discussion, if it is company property that you are using to use LinkedIn and connect with individuals, then it belongs to the firm. But then again, LinkedIn is a public forum, so the contacts don't really belong to anybody. But as Andrew said, probably seek HR advice or employment. I might actually ask that question again to my contact, and I'll share it on social media once we've got it. So my apologies, we couldn't answer exactly on that one, but it's a very good question raised. Annie, what concerns you about what solicitors put on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, I find often that it's not quite the concerns of saying something racist or really offensive or sexist or something like that. It's just being annoying. Sometimes people are worried about, which I'm probably guilty of sometimes. Being maybe irrelevant, I think people get nervous about. And I do think people are worried to stray away from just sharing their firm's content, that their marketing manager has approved a message that they can put with it. I see quite a lot of generic templated posts where they've shared an article and they've written, oh, this is an insightful piece, and you just know that it's come directly from marketing. I think people are a bit scared to venture out and to show some personality, but I really don't think you should be. I think unless you're doing something that Andrew's touched on, and that was really interesting to learn about, you're probably going to be fine. I think it's something that is just a test of common sense, and reading it back and thinking, what would my employer think of this when he reads this? It's that kind of thing. Yeah. I think that generally I'd like to think we're generally a pretty intelligent bunch, and we should be capable of knowing what is okay and what isn't okay to say, but not always, as Andrew has pointed out. So
sure. Helen, what's your thoughts?
Again, I think I echo everything that Andrew and Annie has said, and I think right, actually most of the time lawyers are a pretty risk averse bunch, and they're not going to say anything which is probably going to involve the SRA unless having a particularly silly moment. So I think often the worry is more about the sort of the brand PR of the law firm, and to that extent, I think that what you can often find is, rather than people saying silly or controversial things, perhaps actually what you get is a lot of just bland resharing, and you don't get the personality and a real feel and a real insight into what sort of ultimately, what has made you share that, and making the most of that opportunity to engage with people. I mean, one thing I've noted that certainly when you sort of look at people's profiles on something like Twitter, and I think Twitter and LinkedIn are the two that are really considered to be sort of the business to business. I think Facebook and Instagram are definitely considered more in people's personal lives. In Twitter, you see a lot of these caveats, don't say, this is my personal view, this isn't the view of my organisation. And I haven't seen that. It might just be me, but I haven't seen so much of that in LinkedIn at all. And sort of so I think sometimes it's interesting to sort of, where does the individual end and where does the sort of the firm begin? And in a sense, it comes back to that question of data as well. But the reality is, I think probably if you're doing anything that's in your professional life, it's going to in some way it's forming part of your business life, isn't it? And in that sense, you know, your organisation is going to have an interest in what you're putting out there, and so you have to be both careful not to do silly things, but at the same time, you know, use that opportunity. It's an opportunity to promote and to sell your wares.
Absolutely. So we've had the results in, and great news, your partners approve of your content. Well, that's the majority. So that's good. That makes me know then that the partners are engaging with people on LinkedIn. Seems the floodgates have opened. We've got a number of questions here. So the first one, is LinkedIn now like a crowded bar? Lawyers trying to seek attention. Are clients really looking at this unless your content is targeted? So, Annie, I'm going to put that question to you. Is it like a crowded bar?
It can be, but if anything, I'd encourage it to get more crowded, especially at the junior level, because I find that normally the partners and the associates have the confidence to put themselves out there more, whereas at the sort of junior end, I don't see many people who are trainees. I've one or two who are putting themselves out there. And interestingly, I find that people who've got a training contract offer can be quite vocal, and then when they join the firm, they just seem to disappear. So whether that is their firm sort of not encouraging it or they're scared, but I do think that it's all just networking, isn't it? I know it's done digitally, but the way we go to market as lawyers has changed. We're not going to stuffy networking events. I mean, we can't right now because they're all cancelled. But, you know, that's our new way of talking to people. And I think if you're not there doing it, you're going to miss out on those contacts. And even sometimes people you don't think might be useful at the time actually later on know someone that you didn't know and introduce you, and you get talking, I found. So yeah, I think that there are definite benefits like any networking has. So I would say that it is not a packed bar as such, but it is a forum to meet people, and that's what it should be about. And if anything, I'd like to see more people vying for attention on there, because I don't think I'm seeing enough.
Absolutely. I think what I find with most people on LinkedIn is they just throw up on LinkedIn. They're either trying to sell their services 24/7 or they do nothing at all. And then they wonder why they get no engagement. So I use the 3-2-1 rule. Post 3 things about your service and your website and your law firm. 2 things that are non-specific related to your law firm, but they might be in the legal industry, and 1 which is a media-based, might be a podcast, a video, or an image. But varying up your content. If I talk to you guys about LinkedIn and all things orange day in, day out, you're going to get bored. You're going to switch off. And that is what people are doing with law firms. They're getting bored of seeing them peddling the same old stuff day in, day out. Helen, I think you were going to...
I was just talking to, when I was getting some feedback, and I was talking to one particular large law firm, and I hate to mention that word, algorithms, don't all turn off, but again, this particular law firm was, really encouraging people to sort of get involved in LinkedIn and social media. And part of that is obviously to sell the wares and business development. Part of that is understanding that, the more times an article or a particular person's name is mentioned in social media, Google will pick that up, and that sort of increases the rankings. And so, there's a tech reason as well working behind all of this.
Yes.
And some of the law firms, are using that, and they're communicating that, so they understand actually, why posting on a regular basis and posting particular ways of mixing up the content and the kind of, images as well as prose, or, improves those kind of search engines.
Sure.
So
no, absolutely.
that makes me sound very tech. I'm not. Generally.
No, not at all. Andrew, do you have any insight into that?
No, nothing to on that one. Sorry, I got slightly distracted by another question that I spotted about about another thing to avoid, which is being creepy.
Is that the Charlotte Proudman one?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, no, by all means, if you want to answer that question, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, no, I just explained why I got distracted. It was just another thing to avoid. I can't remember if the regulators got involved in that one, but it's certainly an own goal. there was allegations of somebody trying to court on there, wasn't there? So yeah, don't be, and I don't want to suggest that person was, because I'm not sure if there was an actual finding on that. But yes, it's not a good idea to be creepy on LinkedIn at all.
No, absolutely. We'll come on to some of those questions in a moment. Okay, on to our next question. Using LinkedIn and social media for some firms seems to be a bit of a minefield. More often than not, I'm always asked, I don't know what to say, or what if I say something stupid? My answer to that last bit is don't say stupid things. So Helen, how do you think law firms could overcome this?
Well, I think it is certainly a social media policy could probably help those people. At least everybody knows where they are and don't give examples of what to do, what not to do. So I think that's probably helpful. And I think for some firms, forgive me, Strong, that might be part of some of the accreditations that you need that kind of policy in the background anyway. I think certainly in-house training. I think there's a lot of people who aren't using LinkedIn because they just they're just a bit fearful, and we all know, don't we, that when something does go horribly wrong on social media, the internet, the damage it can do, just flying out and suddenly so many hits. So I think a lot of it is just sort of giving people in-house training, and also not just on what to say and what not to say, but just LinkedIn's general capability. It's not just about sharing. You can invite people to like your corporate page. You can get involved in groups. I mean, there's so much capability there, isn't there? And I think a lot of people, will just stumble into, they'll set up their profile and then kind of off they go. And I think certainly from a firm perspective, if you can have a social media policy, give them in-house training, make sure people are aware what the kind of corporate marketing strategy plan is, then people can sort of plug into that, and it should be relatively safe and bring the rewards that it's capable of.
Absolutely. Annie, what helpful tips have you learned while using LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think looking at the social media policy is a really good place to start. So I know earlier Helen mentioned that she doesn't see disclaimers very often about, all views of my own, but I have got one of those because I did comb through my firm's social media thing, and it made me realize actually that there wasn't that much that I couldn't say. It was just all the sort of sensible things we looked at. I often find it's just a problem with starting. So when I first started using LinkedIn, I just used it as like a virtual CV, I guess. It just had all my work experience, my degree and things, but it didn't have any real content or posts. And during the lockdown, I noticed that quite a lot of trainees were very uncertain about what was going to happen in the market. So I started posting about that to try and, I guess, speak on the issue, because it felt like everyone was worrying, but everyone was too afraid to say it's a bit uncertain out there at the moment, and I'm struggling with that a bit. So I started sharing resources on that. And then when I decided I wanted to qualify into family law, I set up my own blog, and I think that's really helped. I think if you're a solicitor and you've got a practice, that can be your focus, and that can be your in to talk about what it is, that you're passionate about. And I think that really translates, because if you are passionate about something, it will shine through. So
is that a blog on the Foot Anstey website or your own personal blog?
No, it's my own personal blog. So there wasn't a family job at Anstey, sadly, so I'm going to a different firm. So I thought in the interim, I had some time while I was on furlough, that I thought, why don't I just try and start some momentum for that? Because A, I could learn a bit more about family law, because it'd been a year since my seat, and B, I could try and drum up some client interest, I guess, for when I do move on to the next firm.
You heard of a gentleman called Daniel Priestley? Because he recommends that very thing. Key Person of Influence, great book out there. I'm not paid to endorse it, but it's fantastic. And one of the things he talks about, if you want to be a key person of influence, which, Annie, it sounds like you want to be within the family legal field, it's about getting your content out there for people to read. So having your own blog or a news site of sorts is a great way.
Yeah, definitely. I think just having a sort of angle that, oh, Annie, she does family law. I know that sounds a bit cliche and a bit trite, but I think it's just those kind of things. And then obviously once you feel a bit comfortable doing that, you can sort of venture in to the more personal posts. So my dad had a major brain hemorrhage at the start of the year, And it was really tough to be juggling my training contract alongside that. And I realized nobody ever spoke about it. So that was another thing that I thought, actually, let's be a bit open. And we are human beings. Yes, it's a professional site, but that's just one aspect of our life. So I think if you're open and you're genuine, it attracts more people to you, because, you know, we're all human. But I think that's what is scary for people, is to show that sort of vulnerability or that side of their personality, because inevitably some people might not like it, but that's life, you know, that happens every day anyway.
Absolutely. Andrew, you've already kind of touched on some of the compliance areas, but could you give some law firms some advice on how not to fall foul, or just recap on some of the ones you did mention earlier on?
Yeah,
what are the major ones not to fall foul of?
I mean, firstly, just to reiterate what Helen and Annie have said, from my experience, is the first thing is that, you know, you can learn this if you're not sure how to do it. You can do training, and I think being genuine, getting your personality across, I think is huge as well, and can make a big difference. On the compliance side, so as I said, you know, take care around confidentiality. Make sure that you remember that it's professional, but don't be worried about making jokes and commentary, that sort of thing. That's fine. I think the one other key thing in terms of tactics is just to bear in mind that social engagement is great, but social enragement is a very bad thing, and you might need to just pause for the day and come back to a particular feed the next day. I've got one client who's doing, you know, fantastic things on LinkedIn, but the reality is the bigger your audience, the more sort of comments and negative things, and even some abuse that you might get. So you have to try and stay calm and keep it professional, notwithstanding sometimes some pretty horrendous. It's very rare, but.
Sorry, Andrew, we've had a question. It's actually revolving Sales Navigator, which is a premium tool within LinkedIn. This sole purpose of introducing your business to a target audience and hopefully selling your services to them. Is this deemed as soliciting?
It wouldn't be. Well, I'll perhaps double check with you actually after I've answered this question that I've understood it correctly. But if we're talking about finding people who fit your demographic, your profile, and then making some sort of approach or cold request to them via the platform, my view is that wouldn't be prohibited by the SRA ban on unsolicited approaches. I appreciate that the wording of the rules doesn't make that clear, but if you speak with the ethics helpline, they give you a bit more of a history, and essentially these approaches exclude business to business relationships subject to complying with the general law on electronic communications, etc. And so no, I wouldn't be worried about that falling foul of the unsolicited approaches rule.
Excellent. I'm going to take my metaphorical foot out my mouth, because the majority of people are worried about they might say stupid things. So when I said don't say stupid things, that's what the biggest thing you're all worried about. So I need to come up to a response with that one. But thank you for that, Paul. Okay, we'll crack on with our next question. And this one's for Helen. So professional development around LinkedIn for law firms and their lawyers is vital for growth. What do you expect to see from law firms over the next 6 months?
Well, I think we find ourselves in interesting times. Here we are in Zoom rather than, in Bristol Law Society's conference space or something. So I think one of the things I think we've got is we've probably seen a little bit more of the personality of our lawyers. We sit here. I mean, I've got my banner behind today, but I can see, Rich, what posters you've got. I've been on webinars where children have appeared and dogs have barked, and so I think we've all got used to providing professional services, but there's a little bit of personality coming through whether we wanted it or not. And so I think maybe that gives us a little bit of comfort in taking that into some of our social media posts. So I think certainly the fact that there's a lot more people working from home at the moment. Phased return to the office. We know that we're not going to be doing quite so much face-to-face networking, probably at least for the rest of this year in all reality. And so therefore sort of that business networking is a perfect opportunity, isn't it, to sort of ramp up one's presence, you know, and be you know, try and you know, put yourself out there, you know, and maybe if you have been somebody who's just, you know, sort of clicked like or shared, you know, maybe think about commenting on things occasionally and see, you know, whether that engages people. And so I think we might see a little bit more of that, and people using some of the fuller capability of LinkedIn just to make the most of not being able to sort of see people face to face. Because the impression I get from talking to people is people have sort of created connections on LinkedIn, but then have largely tried to follow those up, you know, with a telephone call or by meeting people face to face. It hasn't really sort of necessarily, you know, it's been very low radar in terms of the business development that's gone on. And once you've made that connection, people have sort of taken it away from the platform, and I think it might continue a little bit more now we realise its full capabilities.
And Andrew, how do you think law firms should approach this area?
The professional development side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I think I mean, we've set up quite a few law firms, and those who've got this right have a business, they have a livelihood, they have a whole new life ahead of them. The opportunities on LinkedIn are literally that significant. So I think unless you have a very solid, low cost sort of pipeline of work coming in through other means, I think this is a really it's a huge opportunity to miss out on. So yes, do take the time to, as well as doing your courses on exciting contract law and things like that, you know, there's a potential whole new business waiting for you via this platform. So I would encourage people to, you know, read books, do training, and get up to speed with it, because some people are just not making the most of it, and others are completely cleaning up, to be honest. Some of the startups that we see, as I say, they have an entire business as a result of having taken the time to understand how it works, and getting across their personality. And you can do that incrementally. You don't need to, you know, the next day spend all of your life on LinkedIn and suddenly nail it. You can learn it. There was one question about, I'm just commenting and liking other people's posts. Am I wasting my time? Well, I think the reality is you probably need to do more to get business off LinkedIn. And you will all know better, but that's a good start. And develop, and, you know, go as fast as you're comfortable. And if you're ultimately not comfortable, as you said, Rich, then, you know, perhaps it's not for you. But there are huge opportunities there. So, you know, treat it as you would any other development. There's huge potential.
Absolutely. And Annie, what would you say to the naysayers out there who don't want to be on social media, don't want to be on LinkedIn, hands down, don't involve me? What would you potentially say to those individuals?
Yeah, I would echo Helen and Andrew, really. I mean, what greater time than when we're all forced at home in front of our screens to build up a brand for yourself, to make a name for yourself, to meet new people and network. And I would also say that actually, yes, starting with commenting is actually a great way to start to show some personality, to engage with people. I've been asked to do a podcast next week with someone off the back of me commenting on a post about grief and saying how I felt there wasn't enough out there, oh thank you, about grief online, because people aren't open about it. And my NQ job, you know, it's not ideal to qualify in a pandemic. I mean, it was really quite scary, and there's not many jobs out there at the moment. And the job I've got came off someone messaging me on LinkedIn, knowing about an opportunity and putting me in touch. So if I wasn't using LinkedIn over the lockdown, I probably would still be worrying about how I was going to pay my bills in a couple of months. So yeah, I really do think there are a lot of benefits. And you see people like, I don't know if you follow Alice Stevenson, she runs Stevenson Law. I mean, her posts
to Amsterdam.
Brilliant, yeah, and her engagement is amazing. And I imagine, I mean, I don't know personally, but she must drum up quite a lot of work off the back of that, because everything she does, I'm a bit of a fangirl and I like. So yeah, you know, there are people doing really well out there, and what better opportunity than now when we're all forced to interact more virtually, and there aren't as many networking opportunities face to face. So why would you not?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, what I'm seeing is there's a lot of networking groups that have started developing now that we've gone over this 3-month stage of lockdown. And also, it's kind of been a fire under some bums to get people onto LinkedIn or on social media. Social media is a megaphone for businesses. Everybody goes, oh, well, I get clients. My clients know about me. What about the clients who don't know about you, or the competition who know about your clients that might steal them? Because I'm seeing the modern law firm, Annie, by the way, has got over 1,300 followers. And collectively, I think in this collection here, we've got over 6,000. So as Andrew's already noted, it is a bit of a numbers game at the same time. Dinesh, I have no idea why the poll didn't add up to 100% or more. I'll leave that to the mathematicians in the room. But the resulting in terms of business development is promoting the law firm and myself, which is great, because normally it's promote my personal brand and nothing else. Andrew, you kind of touched on, if it's my client, my work that I'm dealing with, it's not really the firm, it's all me. But that's very good to know that they're sharing content for the brand and the firm. Right, we're in the home stretch. On to my final question for you guys. We know social media is here to stay. It's just a case of who and how you manage it within your law firm. So for my final question for you all, what does the future of law look like on social media? I'm going to ask the SRA enforcer, Andy, what does it look like for law firms?
Well, as the SRA specialist, I want to start by saying how wildly unqualified I am to answer this question. But I will do my very best. I guess I would it's only going to go in one direction. I think we're going to see more and more people cottoning on to how much money they're leaving on the table, frankly, here. And I think that it is going to get more competitive. I'm hoping people will stop using it just as a sort of a billboard to do quite old-fashioned advertising on this new platform that actually allows people to understand who you are, your personality, and the value, your expertise. So why would you just have an advert sort of posted once a week on there? So hopefully people will start to use it a bit better. We may see some more freebies, some more content, I suppose, some more things of value being given away on there. And I wonder if we're going to see more platforms that, we're seeing new platforms all the time that do weird and wonderful things. One may come along at some point that actually allows, at the moment, everyone's terrified of creating a retainer on social media, and so they should be. But in the future, you might have some sort of platform that allows people to actually, get some advice. Get some drafting, get some templates on some sort of platform.
Annie, yourself?
Yeah, I think the future of law is going to change. It's going to have to. I think that we're, as they're shutting down their offices, when you go to a lawyer, it's not going to be about how big and fancy and swish their office is anymore. It's going to be more about the individuals who work there, which I think will be quite nice and refreshing if that does transpire. And also, I just think we need a bit of a shake-up, because the whole stock image, and a boring post is just not going to cut it anymore. You look at other industries and people like copywriters and marketing, and they're doing really fun, innovative posts, and then we as the lawyers are just regurgitating this kind of beige content, and I just think people aren't going to read it. And that's kind of why I wanted to be a bit different, because I looked at the family law sites and they're all just really bleak pictures of unhappy couples. And I get that family law can involve quite emotional circumstances, but it doesn't have to be portrayed that way, I don't think. Yeah. And some people are happy to get divorced actually, so they might not want to see a rainy background and someone looking sad. So yeah, I just think we need a bit of a shake up in the way we approach it, because I think it's going to get a bit boring otherwise.
Absolutely. Divorce, second largest search term in 2020, because we've all been in lockdown.
Oh, really?
How long?
Yeah. I know, really? It's a good time to go into that. Yeah,
what was the first?
The first one was actually conveyancing. People wanted to buy and sell their properties. They were trying to close deals before, and then third was employment disputes and things like that. So yeah, I mean, divorce, there is normally the divorce around February anyway, but yeah, the divorce or disputes or family disputes has been tinkering between 1 and 2 position. Helen,
people weren't googling
sorry.
about anti-competitive behaviour around sales of hand sanitizer and toilet roll.
That was the #1 searched item on Amazon in March.
On that note,
so, yeah.
what is interesting is it's mainly adulteries either being discovered because people are in lockdown or people confessing to them, and that just baffles me because I think, why would you confess to it when you're then stuck in the house with your
lockdown
partner?
does amazing things for you.
Yeah.
Helen, what's your take? Social media for the future of law.
I mean, I think picking up on something Annie was saying about, the lack of physical offices or us not being necessarily in the office quite so much. And I think, one of the things that draws both employees and clients to law firms, as well as obviously the skill set, is kind of the culture of that firm. And I think that needs to be demonstrated online because, people aren't going to go into the office so much to meet people. And so I think, having that sort of personal brand, that firm brand is going to become more and more important in kind of conveying that online presence of, who you are and what you can do for people. And the other thing that I hope is, I think probably, again, touched on earlier, we've probably had a lot of, it's possibly been seen that, LinkedIn is kind of, in terms of posting stuff, maybe it's a place for the more senior lawyers to be, and rather than the junior lawyers. But actually the junior lawyers, that they're probably ahead of the game in terms of their skills with social media generally, and so don't be afraid to use it in the workplace. Everybody's been used to networking remotely in a way that some of the more senior lawyers haven't. They've been much more used to face-to-face networking. So actually I think the junior lawyers hopefully will start to feel a little bit more confident if they actually they have all the skills there. They just need to be a little less fearful and look at those social media policies and get your brand out there.
Absolutely. There's been a couple of questions that have come through. Should discussing political opinions be avoided on LinkedIn? My personal rule is you don't talk about your job, religion, or the government, because it can be a fine line. You might represent clients who are, should we say, Labour, or some are Conservative. And if you're very pro one side, you could start losing. So my opinion on the government is you just kind of sit on the fence, unfortunately, unless you want to start some weird, wonderful ramblings with Boris. One of the other ones is that I saw, I think issues can come up when solicitors are unfamiliar with how social media works. So based on that one question alone from that person, and I've had plenty on LinkedIn already this week, I'm going to hold a LinkedIn session next week on the features, functionality, how you should be using LinkedIn within a law firm, for the profile page and the company page. So stay tuned for notifications about that. Any last bits of wisdom from the panel? We're a couple of minutes over. But any
Rich,
last,
before that, sorry, I just
yes.
noticed someone's raised their hand. I don't know what that means.
Let's go to the chat. Here we go. Whoever just raised their hand, for some weird reason, here we go. 2 attendees have raised their hand. Anna and George, I won't say the last names, will be confidential. If you guys have a question, if you want to pop it in the question or in the chat, and we can get that answered for you. While they're typing out their question or their answer, I did ask at the beginning, can you raise your hands if you can hear me? They might have just they left their hands up. But essentially, that's any last words of wisdom from the panel for everybody on there at the moment. What top tip would you give them?
Let's go first. I'd just say to just do it. Just, start trying to engage. Yeah, just, stop worrying about it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, Shia LaBeouf / Nike. Yeah, I would just say, just start, because, that's how everyone has to start somewhere. And don't be, try and ignore the inner voice that goes, oh, what if no one cares what I have to say, and just post it. Would be
if you
my
haven't read Daniel Priestley's book, you're almost quoting him word for word.
Have
on
I?
that bit. So
weird.
So that's perfect. Andrew, words of wisdom from yourself?
Yeah, I was going to say be brave, but that's probably been taken. So I would echo that. But I suppose the other thing is you can, if you're not sure, you can educate yourself. You can go out and learn. Be brave, but don't be stupid. That's probably
be brave, don't be stupid. I'm going to get a t-shirt with that on. Helen, yourself.
Oh, I don't think there's much more to say, but yeah, to dip your toe in the water, talk to people who are super users, educate yourself, talk to your law firms if you feel that, that there's things that you don't know and they could help you with. But yeah, just have a go. And as long as you're, sensible, only good things will come out of it.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of Now versus the Future versus the SRA. Thank you for everybody who's contributed on the polls and in the questions. Do follow and connect with our panel. Please use the personal invite to connect. Don't use the boring, hi, I'd like to add you to my professional network. You would never speak to somebody like that in real life. So use something personal. Say thank you, or if you have any questions for them. As promised, I will provide everybody who's attended a branded personal LinkedIn banner for you. Just email rich@conscious.co.uk. Just send me your logo and I'll take care of that. We've got loads of other tip booklets at the Conscious website, but please check out Andy and Annie and Helen's profiles and their services. Who knows, you might be able to benefit or contribute or work on something together. So that's it from me. If there's I've got one more question. Dinesh has just said, great event. Thank you, Dinesh, really appreciate it. We have recorded this, so we will be providing a link to it for you guys to download. Lastly, Helen, Andy, Annie, thank you so much for doing this for us today. And I look forward to speaking with you all soon. Take care.
Well, thanks very much to you too, Rich.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. Bye all.
No worries.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.